Hey, you're back. Welcome to BlushPoint. I write these stories myself, and they're kind of like romantic anime daydreams. Some people use them to fall asleep, some just listen to feel stuff. Either way, you're safe here. Tonight's story? It's so adorable. You're gonna love him. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe. A festival of lights. The world tilted on its axis the moment you stepped through the Torii gate. Gone was the dusty road. In its place, a river of people flowed through a landscape painted in soft, ethereal light. Lanterns. Countless lanterns. They hung from every branch, every eaves, bobbing gently in the warm summer breeze. Cherry blossom trees, their delicate pink petals catching the light, lined the path, their sweet fragrance thick in the air. It was a symphony of color and scent, a dream made real. Whoa, you breathed, the single word lost in the gentle murmur of the crowd and the soft strumming of a shamisen somewhere in the distance. A hand touched your arm, light as a butterfly's wing. Impressive, right? Kaido's eyes, usually sparkling with mischief, were softened by the light. He looked almost vulnerable. You nodded, unable to find your voice. You'd seen pictures, of course, but nothing could have prepared you for the sheer magic of the festival. Stalls lined the path, overflowing with candied apples, goldfish in plastic bags, and masks depicting foxes and demons. The air crackled with energy, a tangible buzz of excitement and anticipation. Lost for words? Unheard of, Kaito teased, but his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. He seemed restless. He tugged you gently through the crowd, his fingers lingering a moment longer than necessary. You let him lead, your gaze darting from one wonder to the next. The rhythmic beat of taiko drums pulsed through the ground, vibrating in your chest. Children laughed, their faces illuminated by the warm glow of their own miniature lanterns. It was a world apart, a place where worries seemed to melt away like snow in the sun. Eventually, Kaido led you to a quieter spot, a small clearing overlooking a pond dotted with lily pads. A vendor nearby was selling wish lanterns, delicate paper structures ready to be set adrift. "Want to make a wish?" he asked, his voice softer now. You nodded, your throat suddenly dry. You chose a lantern, a delicate shade of lavender, and accepted the brush and ink from the vendor. Kaito chose a crimson one, its color bold against the twilight sky. He watched you as you carefully wrote your wish, his gaze intense, unwavering. You felt a blush creep up your neck and focused on the delicate strokes of the brush. He was close, too close, and the scent of sandalwood and something uniquely Kaito filled your senses. Finally, you were finished. Kaito, however, seemed to be struggling. He chewed on his lip, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Having trouble?" you asked, trying to keep your voice light. He sighed, a small puff of air that tickled your ear. "It's complicated." With a sudden movement, he handed you his lantern. "Here," he said, his voice unusually low. "Read it." Your heart skipped a beat. You took the lantern, your fingers brushing against his. The paper was still slightly damp with ink. In elegant calligraphy, only one word was written: your name. Your breath caught in your throat. You looked up at him, your eyes wide. He swallowed hard, his gaze locked on yours. I couldn't think of anything else to wish for," he confessed, his voice barely a whisper. The air crackled between you, thick with unspoken feelings. The sounds of the festival faded into the background, replaced by the frantic beat of your own heart. He reached out, his fingers tracing the curve of your jaw. His touch was feather-light, hesitant. He leaned closer, his breath warm on your lips. The world tilted again, this time on a different axis, a more personal one. He paused, his eyes searching yours, a question hanging in the air. He was so close, you could almost taste him. The scent of cherry blossoms and ink mingled, a heady, intoxicating mix. Then, he pulled back, just slightly, leaving you suspended in a moment of exquisite tension. He dropped his hand, a ghost of a touch lingering on your skin. Maybe we should launch these, he said, his voice strained. He picked up his lantern, his fingers fumbling slightly. The moment hung, charged and unspoken. Midnight eyes. The crowd thinned as you wandered away from the food stalls, the air thick with the scent of grilled squid and sweet mochi. Lost in the soft glow of the lanterns bobbing overhead, you didn't see him until it was too late. A solid thud, a startled gasp, and you were sprawling against someone's chest, the delicate paper lantern you'd been admiring tumbling to the ground. Whoa there! Did you see a ghost, or are you just trying to steal my handsome looks? A familiar voice chuckled, steadying you with strong hands on your arms. Kaido. His midnight eyes sparkled with amusement, reflecting the warm light. A strand of dark hair fell across his forehead as he bent down to retrieve your fallen lantern, his fingers brushing yours. My deepest apologies, O graceful wanderer. I seem to have been blocking your path to enlightenment. He offered the lantern back with a theatrical bow, a mischievous grin playing on his lips. I wasn't looking where I was going, you stammered, flustered. His nearness was doing things to your pulse, clearly, though I must admit, it's a rather unique way to introduce yourself. He winked, that playful glint returning. But beneath the surface, you sensed a nervous energy, a subtle flutter in his voice that hinted at something more. He was fiddling with the edge of his yukata sleeve, his usual confident swagger momentarily absent. He cleared his throat. Speaking of introductions, how about we write our wishes on these things and send them off to the heavens? Seems like the least I can do after nearly causing you a concussion. He gestured to the stack of wish lanterns beside a small donation box. You nodded, relieved to have a task to focus on. You chose 2 lanterns, a soft pink and a calming blue, and found a quiet spot near the riverbank. The air hummed with the murmur of conversations and the gentle lapping of water against the stone. Sitting cross-legged beside him, you concentrated on your wish, carefully writing it on the delicate paper with the brush provided. He watched you, a soft smile on his face, before turning his attention to his own lantern. When you were both finished, Kaito held up his lantern, a sheepish expression on his face. Okay, don't laugh, but I might have cheated a little. You tilted your head, curious. Cheated how? He hesitated, his gaze dropping to the lantern in his hands. I didn't write a wish for myself. He looked up, his eyes meeting yours, the teasing light gone, replaced by something deeper, more vulnerable. I just wrote your name. The confession hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Your breath caught in your throat. The playful banter, the teasing smiles, all faded away, leaving only the raw honesty in his midnight eyes. He reached out, his fingers brushing against your hand, sending a jolt of electricity through you. His voice was a low murmur, barely audible above the river's song. I've been wanting to tell you. He trailed off, the space between you shrinking, his gaze fixed on your lips. He leaned in, the warmth of his breath ghosting across your cheek. He stopped. His eyes flickered with a mixture of longing and fear. He pulled back slightly, the moment broken, the tension palpable. He cleared his throat, the playful mask almost, but not quite, back in place. We should probably light these, huh? He fumbled with the lighter, his hand trembling slightly. Whispers of cherry blossoms. The air hung thick and sweet, heavy with the scent of grilled squid and spun sugar. Lanterns, like giant, luminous fireflies, pulsed with a warm glow, painting the throngs of festival goers in shifting hues of orange and gold. Kaido navigated the crowd with a practiced ease, his hand lightly guiding you through the human river. Careful there! He chuckled, his voice close to your ear. Wouldn't want you getting swept away by the sheer force of enthusiasm for discounted yakitori. You playfully shoved his shoulder. Speak for yourself, Nakamura-san. I'm sensing a deep-seated craving for grilled chicken on a stick. He grinned, the lanterns catching the sparkle in his dark eyes. Is that so? Well, perhaps I could be persuaded to procure some for you, in exchange for a smile, maybe? You laughed, and the sound felt light and airy, carried away on the warm summer breeze. As you walked, you couldn't help but notice the subtle fidgeting in his movements. He kept adjusting the collar of his yukata, his fingers drumming a silent rhythm against his thigh. He seemed almost restless. "Something on your mind, Kaito?" you asked, trying to keep your tone casual. He stopped, his smile faltering for a fraction of a second before snapping back into place. "Me? Never. Just admiring the architectural genius of these festival stalls. Truly inspiring, wouldn't you agree?" He gestured vaguely at a stall selling goldfish in plastic bags. You raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "Right, because goldfish are the pinnacle of architectural design." He laughed again, but it sounded a little strained this time. He tugged at a loose thread on his yukata, his gaze fixed on the ground. "Okay, fine. Maybe I'm a little nervous. Is that so surprising?" "Surprising? No," you admitted. "Intriguing? Definitely." He finally met your gaze, and the playful mask seemed to slip, revealing a vulnerability that tugged at your heart. "Intriguing how?" he asked softly, his voice barely a whisper above the festival's hum. You hesitated, unsure of how to respond. The air crackled with unspoken words, the energy between you shifting, intensifying. You looked away, focusing on the delicate branches of a nearby cherry blossom tree, illuminated by a string of fairy lights. Even the blossoms seemed to be holding their breath. Intriguing because you're usually so confident, you finally said, choosing your words carefully. "It's interesting to see another side of you." He took a step closer, his shoulder brushing against yours. The scent of cherry blossoms, real and imagined, filled the air. "And what side is that?" he murmured, his voice low and husky. You could feel the heat radiating from his body, the nervous energy thrumming beneath his skin. He was so close, you could almost taste the anticipation in the air. He seemed to be fighting an internal battle, his eyes flicking between your eyes and your lips. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again, swallowing hard. The moment stretched, taut, and electric, suspended between possibility and regret. Finally, he took a step back, breaking the spell. "Come on," he said, his voice a little too loud, a little too bright. "Let's get that yakitori." Sweetness and rain. The candied apple was monstrous, a sticky, crimson orb impaled on a flimsy wooden stick. Kaito presented it with a flourish, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "For you, my lady, to fuel your wish, granting endeavors." You laughed, swatting playfully at his arm. "I can't eat that whole thing myself. I'll be sugared out for a week." "Challenge accepted?" He raised an eyebrow, a silent dare hanging in the air. Instead of verbally responding, you took a bite. The hard candy shell cracked under your teeth, releasing a burst of cinnamon sweetness. You groaned dramatically, clutching your chest. "Oh, the sugar rush, it's overwhelming." Kaito chuckled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. He took a bite from the opposite side, his teeth scraping against the glossy surface. You found yourself oddly fascinated watching him. It was a strangely intimate act, sharing this ridiculously oversized apple. He licked a stray bit of caramel from his finger, his gaze meeting yours. The air thickened, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Suddenly, the sky opened up. Fat raindrops splattered on the ground, growing in intensity with alarming speed. The cheerful chatter of the festival was quickly drowned out by the drumming of the rain. Lanterns flickered, their warm glow struggling against the downpour. "Shelter!" Kaido yelled, grabbing your hand. His touch sent a jolt through you, a familiar spark igniting in your chest. He pulled you through the throngs of fleeing festival-goers, dodging puddles and umbrellas. He led you towards a massive oak tree, its ancient branches stretching out like protective arms. The leaves formed a dense canopy, offering a surprising amount of coverage. You huddled close to the trunk, the rough bark scratching against your back. Rain cascaded around you, a shimmering curtain separating you from the rest of the world. The scent of wet earth filled the air, mingling with the lingering sweetness of the candied apple on your breath. Kaido stood close, his shoulder brushing against yours. He was quieter now, the playful teasing gone. He seemed different, vulnerable somehow. The rain had washed away the bravado, leaving something raw and real in its place. "Are you cold?" he asked softly, his breath warm against your ear, Before you could answer, he shrugged off his light jacket and draped it around your shoulders. It smelled faintly of his cologne, sandalwood, and something else, something uniquely Kaido. You pulled it tighter, burying your face in the soft fabric. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the relentless drumming of the rain. You could feel his gaze on you, intense and unwavering. The air crackled with an energy that made your skin prickle. He shifted closer, his hand hovering near yours. The tension was almost unbearable, a fragile thread stretched taut between you. The world held its breath, waiting. Shelter from the storm? The oak's wide boughs provided scant shelter as the tempest lashed at them, a horizontal onslaught. Each blast propelled fresh droplets, gluing damp tendrils to your forehead. You shrank against the rough bark, chilled despite the heavy air. Kaito mirrored you, a sudden pressing together of hips and shoulders. "Sorry," he murmured, not retreating. A different current thrummed in the space, a low vibration against your skin. The festival, the joyous throng, the hopeful wishes released to the sky, it all seemed a lifetime away, dwarfed by the stark reality of the squall and the unexpected closeness. The earthy aroma of the drenched woods mingled with a sophisticated hint of his aftershave, sandalwood spiced with citrus, a detail previously lost to the festive air. Water beaded on his dark lashes, catching the filtered light like tiny jewels. He appeared, transformed. The usual lighthearted banter had vanished, replaced by a focused gravity that quickened your pulse. "Cold?" His voice was a low rumble, barely cutting through the downpour's percussive rhythm. You shook your head, a half-truth at best. It was more the awareness of his proximity, the subtle electricity tracing a path along your arm where his shoulder grazed yours with each gust. He shifted again, his arm rising, not quite an embrace, hovering. Then, as if compelled, he gently brushed a stray lock behind your ear. The simple act sparked a tremor unrelated to the temperature. "Your face," he murmured, his attention fixed on your cheek. "There's a smudge, ink, I think, from the lantern." His thumb, surprisingly soft, traced an absent-minded path across your skin, erasing the imagined imperfection. The fleeting touch lingered, a brand on your cheek. Breathless, you remained still, hesitant to shatter the fragile atmosphere that had enveloped them. "Better?" he questioned, his gaze searching your own. The verdant sparks within his irises seemed to intensify in the dim light filtering through the leaves. You swallowed, your throat suddenly parched. "Yeah," you breathed. "Better." The rain persisted, a steady, insistent beat that amplified the silence between them. Kaito's gaze dropped to your mouth, which parted almost imperceptibly. The space separating them felt impossibly charged, thick with unspoken desire. He edged closer, his breath warm against your skin, and for a breathless moment, you were certain he would kiss you. Wishes on paper. The wishing lantern station buzzed with a quieter energy than the food stalls, a concentrated hum of hopeful murmurs and the rustle of paper. Bamboo scaffolding held stacks of pristine white lanterns, their delicate frames glowing softly from within. Kaito led you to a small table littered with brushes, ink pots, and scraps of colorful paper. "All right, artist extraordinaire," he said, a familiar teasing lilt in his voice. "Let's see what masterpieces you conjure up." He nudged a brush towards you, but his gaze flickered away almost instantly, settling on the chaotic array of supplies. He picked up a small pot of crimson ink, turning it over and over in his hands. You chose a lantern, the smooth paper cool beneath your fingertips. The air smelled faintly of sandalwood and something sweet, like plum blossoms. As you dipped a brush into the ink, your mind drifted back to the glittering lake, the gentle sway of the boats, Kaito's hand brushing yours. You decided to paint a scene of the lake. Kaito cleared his throat. "So, what are you wishing for?" He didn't look up, concentrating intently on the label of the ink pot. You hesitated. "If I tell you, it won't come true." You began to sketch the outline of a willow tree weeping towards the water. He chuckled, a nervous sound that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Fair enough. I suppose some things are best kept secret." He picked up a brush, dabbed it in the ink, then immediately wiped it off on a discarded scrap of paper. He repeated the action several times. You glanced at him, a question forming on your lips. He was usually so confident, so quick with a joke. Now, he seemed flustered. His cheeks were flushed, and he avoided your gaze with an almost comical intensity. Finally, you finished your painting of the lake. You watched it dry for a moment, then turned to Kaido. His lantern was still blank. "Kaido, are you okay?" you asked softly. He jumped, startled. "Huh? Oh yeah, totally fine. Just, having a bit of an artist's block, you know?" He forced a laugh, but it sounded strained. He finally met your eyes, and you saw a flicker of something vulnerable, something real beneath the surface. He sighed, then picked up his lantern. Slowly, deliberately, he turned it around so you could see. On the pristine white paper, written in elegant black calligraphy, was your name, your breath caught in your throat. His voice dropped, a husky whisper barely audible above the festival music. I couldn't think of anything else to write." He reached out, his fingers brushing against yours as he adjusted the lantern in your hand. The touch sent a jolt of warmth through your arm. He leaned closer, the scent of his cologne, a mix of citrus and spice, filling your senses. His gaze locked on yours, intense and unwavering. Maybe wishing for you is enough. He was so close. You could feel the warmth radiating from his body, see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. He tilted his head slightly, his lips parting as if he were about to say something important. But then, he pulled back, a shadow of his usual teasing smile returning to his face. He cleared his throat. "Anyway," he said, his voice regaining its usual playful tone, though a slight tremor remained, "let's get these lanterns up in the air, shall we?" A name in the sky. The air crackled with anticipation as we knelt, lighting the wicks of our paper lanterns. Heat bloomed against your cheeks, mirroring the warmth that spread through your chest. You watched Kaito's face, haloed by the flickering glow. He was unusually still, his usual playful grin replaced by a quiet intensity. "Ready?" he asked, his voice softer than you'd ever heard it. Together, you lifted the lanterns, feeling their gentle tug skyward. Hundreds of others rose around you, a silent, breathtaking ballet of light against the velvet canvas of the night. You traced the delicate brushstrokes of your wish on the paper, a secret hope whispered into the universe. Kaito's lantern bobbed beside yours, a twin flame carrying its own silent plea. You glanced at him, curiosity bubbling. "What did you wish for?" He hesitated, his gaze fixed on the rising lanterns. The playful banter, the easy teasing, seemed to have vanished, leaving a raw vulnerability in its place. I didn't write a wish," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper above the murmur of the crowd. Your breath hitched. "What do you mean?" He finally met your eyes, his expression earnest, almost pleading. I only wrote your name." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The sounds of the festival faded, replaced by the frantic thumping of your heart. Your name carried into the heavens on a fragile paper lantern. It felt monumental. "Kaido," you breathed, unsure what to say. He reached out, his fingers brushing against yours. A jolt of electricity shot up your arm. "I know it's stupid," he said, his thumb tracing small circles on the back of your hand. "But seeing all these lanterns, everyone wishing for something, I realized I already had what I wanted to wish for right here." The lanterns continued their ascent, becoming smaller and smaller until they were just tiny sparks against the inky black. The crowd around you began to thin, people dispersing to other attractions, but you were rooted to the spot, lost in the intensity of Kaito's gaze. He leaned closer, the scent of wood smoke and something uniquely Kaito, a mix of citrus cologne and warm skin, filling your senses. You could feel his breath on your cheek, a feather-light caress that sent shivers down your spine. "Is it okay?" he asked, his voice husky. The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken desires. Okay? Number. This wasn't just okay, this was terrifying, exhilarating, everything you'd secretly longed for. But fear, that familiar, insidious voice, whispered doubts in your ear. He searched your face, his eyes filled with a hopeful vulnerability that made your heart ache. He was so close, the space between you shrinking until it felt like a single breath could bridge the gap. You closed your eyes, anticipation building to a fever pitch, but then he pulled back. Just slightly, but enough to break the spell. His hand slipped from yours, leaving a lingering warmth that quickly faded into the cool night air. Maybe I should walk you home, he said, his voice strained. The magic of the moment shattered, leaving you both suspended in a delicate, unspoken tension. The lanterns continued their silent journey, carrying your name and his secret into the vast, indifferent sky. Unspoken words. The aroma of grilled squid mingled with the sugary tang of plum wine, a heady perfume that clung to the night air, underscored by the susurrus of countless voices. A paper lantern, a solitary ember against the indigo canvas of the sky, drifted upwards. Kaido followed its ascent. "Wish granted?" he murmured, his usual ebullience muted. You confirmed with a nod. "Just a foolish one." Turning to you, the festive lights gilded his face in amber tones. His eyes, usually sparkling with mischief, were shadowed with an uncharacteristic earnestness. He worried at a loose thread on his yukata, a nervous gesture. "Tonight, seeing you was the goal," he confessed, the words rushing out in a disarming tumble. The declaration hung between you, as fragile as the lantern's paper shell. A sudden tightness gripped your chest, stealing your voice. The easy camaraderie you usually shared evaporated, leaving a palpable silence in its wake. He pressed on, his voice barely audible. "The lantern wasn't a lark, you know." He reached, his hand hovering above yours, a tentative offering. For a heartbeat, you feared he'd retreat. Then, his fingertips grazed your skin, a spark that ignited a tremor within you. He enfolded your hand, his warmth a welcome invasion. The festival's clamor, the peals of laughter, the rhythmic pulse of music, the incessant chatter, began to recede into the background. The kaleidoscope of lantern colors softened, the savory scents of the food stalls faded, the world constricted, narrowing to the point of contact between your hands. His skin, calloused from his intricate inventions, radiated a comforting heat. An almost tangible current flowed between you, his gaze locked with yours, questioning, vulnerable. He swallowed, the movement visible in the hollow of his throat. He drew nearer, the sandalwood scent of his incense blending with the sweet sake on his breath. The flickering light cast elongated shadows that played across his features, accentuating the sculpted lines of his face, the alluring curve of his mouth. He was so near you, felt his very presence like a tangible force. He started to speak, then paused, his eyes flicking to your lips. The air vibrated with unspoken desires, thick with anticipation. He seemed caught in a silent conflict, his face a mixture of longing and apprehension. He shifted, breaking the fragile connection. He cleared his throat, retracting his hand, leaving a phantom warmth behind. "It's growing late," he said, his voice strained, avoiding your gaze. "Perhaps we should return." "A lingering promise." The air thrummed, a low, persistent vibration that mirrored the frantic beat of your own heart. Kaido's hand, still warm from releasing the lantern, remained cupped around yours. The scent of burning wax and sweet dango hung heavy in the humid night, a cloying perfume that usually soothed, but tonight only amplified the nervous energy crackling between you. He hadn't broken eye contact since confessing the single word scrawled on his lantern. Your name. The revelation hung in the air, more luminous than the floating lights themselves. His usual teasing smirk was gone, replaced by something vulnerable and breathtaking. He shifted closer. The playful jostling from earlier was gone, replaced by a deliberate, slow movement that made every nerve ending sing. The lanterns cast dancing shadows across his face, highlighting the curve of his jaw, the soft fullness of his lips. His eyes, usually bright and mischievous, were dark pools, reflecting the swirling lights and, you hoped, a little bit of you. He raised his free hand, his fingertips tracing a feather-light path along your jawline. A shiver ran down your spine. It wasn't cold, quite the opposite. His touch was like a spark, igniting a slow burn that spread through your veins. "You know," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that vibrated against your skin, "I'm not usually this. Forward." You swallowed, your throat suddenly dry. "Forward?" You managed to whisper, the word barely audible above the festive din. He chuckled softly, a sound that tickled your ear. "Let's just say I prefer to observe from a safe distance. Analyze, strategize." His thumb brushed across your cheekbone. "But sometimes," he continued, his gaze dropping to your lips, then flicking back up to meet your eyes, "sometimes strategy goes out the window." He leaned closer. The space between you shrunk, the scent of his cologne, a blend of citrus and something subtly woodsy, filling your senses. You could feel his breath warm against your skin. Your eyelids fluttered shut, anticipation building with each millisecond. He was going to kiss you, but he didn't. Instead, he stopped, a hair's breadth away. The air crackled with unspoken desire, a tangible force that held you both captive. His breath hitched. You could feel the tension radiating from him, a silent battle waging beneath the surface. He pulled back slightly, his hand dropping from your face. The loss of contact was jarring, a sudden plunge into cool air. He looked away, his gaze fixed on the glowing lanterns drifting lazily across the inky sky. He began, then hesitated, his voice rough. "This was a lot, maybe too much." He ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture that betrayed his nervousness. The promise still lingered, hanging heavy in the space between you. He hadn't kissed you, but he hadn't completely retreated either. The possibility remained, shimmering like the lanterns above, a fragile, beautiful thing. A question, unspoken but undeniable. "Yeah," you whispered, finding your voice again. "Maybe." He finally met your eyes, a flicker of something hopeful and scared, dancing within them. The lanterns continued their silent ascent, carrying with them not just wishes, but the weight of what might be.